I can't say enough of how this center influenced me and the benefits that my wife got from it. I thought nobody can take care of her like me, and I knew I had to do something for my family. It's in their hearts that they want to provide the care for the people that deserve it here.
Welcome to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller. My special guest today, Aisha Wolders from the Office of the Fairfield County Prosecutor, Greg Marks. Welcome, Aisha.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Than's for being here today.
Yeah.
You know, I know it's cold outside, and we had some bad weather, but
Cold in here.
Oh, it's not cold in here. It's nice in here. The just a rundown. Actually, graduated Lancaster High School, and then OUL,
Yep.
and is now going to go to law school at Capital University.
Yeah, pretty
That's
soon.
neat. That's very neat. What decided to do that? What was that?
It's just, that's what I've always done. I've worked in law firms since I was about 16. It's just something that I tried running away from at one point in time, and I'm like, why am I doing this?
Yeah, just decided to go back.
Yeah.
Now, you are a victims assistance specialist, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And we've known each other for a long time. Your mom works at the Y, and your dad works out at the Y, and your brother plays football at the high school. And what took you into victims assistance? What was it? Just something that came to you one day and said, "Hey, Mom, I want to do this"?
I was working at a law firm until about the time that I had my daughter, and she turns 3 today. So
You can say happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Bella. But I was working at a law firm, and I thought I wanted to get away from that, so I got a job at the Pickerington Police Department as a 911 dispatcher. And I didn't realize it at the time, but really, dispatchers a lot of times, if a crime is initiated through the police department, those are really a victim's first line of communication. So it was something that I had been doing, working with victims, and didn't really know it. So when I saw this job open up in Lancaster, I wanted to move closer to home anyway, as far as my job goes. So it was something that was very interesting to me, to kind of be on that end of it, working with the victim instead of the criminal.
Yeah. Now I know Greg Marks has done some reorganization and things like that, and has given you some new assignments. Is that?
Yeah, he came up with a community outreach project that he's assigned our division to, and I'm kind of, I guess, at the forefront of it, trying to organize everything and just educating people on their rights as crime victims, what they can do if they're victimized, and how to get your life back after you've been a victim of crime.
Is it more difficult? Do people understand their rights? I guess maybe that's
No.
How do you go about it? I mean,
Yeah.
I've never been a victim. How do you go about it? I mean,
Well, if people are unaware of the services that we offer, once charges are filed or somebody is indicted, once it gets to that stage, they get a victim rights letter that introduces who their victim advocate is. It's a letter from Greg Marks. It says the services that our Victim Assistance Division offers to crime victims, what their rights are, and kind of summarizes them very briefly, and then encourages them to call their victim assistance specialist to discuss all of this further. But part of this community outreach assignment that we're doing is, it's true that there are crimes that happen that are never reported. So not every victim of crime has an offender who has charges filed against them. So we're trying to do this community outreach project, so for those people that their offenders are never arrested or anything like that, they still have these services. But the thing is, until you get that victim rights letter, most people don't even know that we exist. So we're trying to just spread this awareness, let people know that we're there, even if there's no charges or anything, no case pending.
Oh, you're actually doing presentations throughout the county. If somebody wants to get a hold of you, call Greg Marks' office. What's the easiest way?
You can reach me by my email. It's awalders@co.fairfield.oh.us, or my direct line is 740-652-7577.
I know you've done some presentations. You've done Pickerington. You've done them at the YMCA. How long are they? Is it something that you can do in an hour, or is it longer than that? Or?
Yeah, like an hour, 2-hour blocks. And we're actually, now that you guys have my telephone number, we're open to ideas of places, organizations that might want to host one of our presentations, some ideas. It's always going to be about crime victim rights, but the one that I did in Pickerington, I did for the dispatchers there, and some dispatchers from Fairfield County attended as well. And was kind of, my approach as far as that went was, what are your crime victim rights, and how can a dispatcher make that victim aware? Because like I said, that's like the first line of communication sometimes. So services that the dispatchers can offer to get them, to their victim assistance specialist. And then the one that we did at the Y was about crime victim rights, but it had a spin on it that Dave Kessler helped me with. That was about financial exploitation of the elderly.
How big a problem is that? Because I know I've talked to Dave a couple times, but I don't think people understand how great an issue that is.
Yeah, he calls it suffering in silence. It's an extremely underreported crime, so we don't even have, an actual figure ascertained or anything, because so many of them go unreported.
What, and how do you combat that? I mean, if you hear about that, what advice do you give to people? I mean, you're right, some people say, I don't want to say anything.
Right.
What advice can you give to them?
It depends on what approach they want to take. If they want prosecution, if they just want, stay away orders, protection orders, if they want financial recovery, it all depends on what they want. But if it's going to end in prosecution and somebody being put behind bars, which is where, a lot of times we think that they should be, then it's going to have to start with a police report. But
Has there ever been a time when you thought, boy, this is an open shut case? And then all of a sudden it's like, well, wait a minute.
yeah, because we know all the little nuances
exactly.
of a case, yeah,
Does it
happens
frustrate
all
you?
the time. Sure it does. Because there's stuff that we know too that because of the law we can't, disclose certain parts of it if it's in trial, and it's very frustrating.
Sure.
Like if you only knew what he did before, if you only knew that he's in prison, or
Right.
Yeah, it's very frustrating.
I know that there are different organizations. The Lighthouse comes to mind. There's some other organizations. Is there a pamphlet people can get about it, and how should they get it? Or what?
We have lots and lots of paperwork. When we send out the victim rights letter, we send several resources out there too, and websites for people to go to if they're not comfortable. A lot of people see if they contact us, they're asking for help, and that's not what it is. These services are available, we should take advantage of them. But some people like to do that on their own, so we try to give them the resources that they need to, do it themselves if they want. But we have lots of information, depending on the victimization when we meet with that victim. If it's a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault, we give them a packet of information that is specific to their victimization.
Is there not a trend, but are senior citizens less likely to report, or young people less likely to report, or?
I'm inclined to say that yes, senior citizens are probably less likely because they come from a different generation where you didn't air your dirty laundry, so to speak, and they're humiliated about certain victimizations, and it's just something like domestic violence among the elderly. It's just something that you just don't talk about. So.
And I know you've been doing this a while. Do you think people understand their rights, their victims' rights?
No.
And how do you? I mean, you're doing presentations and doing those things, but it sounds like people just don't understand.
Yeah, and they don't. And what I try to explain to people is that the concept of crime victim rights is so enormous, and so, my position, and Jennifer and Maria in our office, our positions as advocates are to break it down so people don't get overwhelmed, because the victimization itself, the crime itself, is already very overwhelming. So break it down and just give you like one little piece, fragment at a time, so you can understand it from A to B, and then A to B, just break it down in little sections so that they understand it. So it's too much to just explain to people entirely what it is, and then just hand it all to them and wish them luck,
There, I know that once, something happens, you try to get them back to where they were before that.
Try.
And
it's going to be different. We don't really try to get them back to where they were before, because you can't. Once you're a victim of crime, you're changed. You can get to a comparable level, something just as good, but it's going to be different. And so it's all individual. You just, you meet with a person and find out what it's going to take for them, if they need protection orders, if they need relocation, shelter, medical treatment, counseling services. sometimes they just want somebody to talk to, somebody to walk them through it and
Right.
believe them, and that's a big thing.
Do you work with other counties too? Do you ever get together and have symposiums or presentations? Or?
Since I have been here, we have not done that yet. It's my understanding that that has been done, and that's something that we definitely are looking to get into.
The community in general, when those things happen, I mean, there are a lot of resources. I'm assuming
Mhm.
people just don't know about. I
Right.
know 211 has the telelogs and things like that. If they come to the prosecutor's office, which is at 239 West Main Street in the governmental city building, I'm trying to think what the name of it is, services building.
Yeah.
It's a JFS building.
Yeah.
That do they have to have an appointment? Can they just come in? I mean, if they just want to talk to find out about their right to, or maybe they know somebody that.
Well, you can always stop in, and there are three of us, and there are three of us for a reason. So hopefully
Mhm.
somebody's available. Well, we do spend a lot of our time. We're in and out at court all the time because we accompany
Right.
victims at their court hearings and attend for them sometimes. So it's not necessarily just like anywhere really. It's not the best way to approach it is to just show up without an appointment because you can't guarantee
Right.
it might be a wasted trip. But
Mhm.
if we're available, we'll certainly meet with somebody. We'll stop what we're doing and meet with somebody. That's what we're there for. But it's always better to call ahead.
Do you ever remember a time when you thought, oh, why am I doing this? I mean.
Yeah, I have a hard time. So when I started at the prosecutor's office,
Mhm.
I was 5 months pregnant with a young child at home, and one of the first cases that came in was a child sexual assault case, and that was really, those are still very difficult
Yeah.
for me.
Yeah.
And the Child Advocacy Center in Fairfield County is wonderful, and they do most of the legwork for that kind of stuff, but still just something as simple as opening the file and reading the facts and that's hard for anybody, and I just had a really tough time. So it's instances like those that really, they rock me a little bit.
It's so when Ashley's not working, what's Ashley doing? Jogging, running?
After toddlers.
After
newborns.
toddlers?
Yeah, there's not really much of that, and then I took on this new schoolwork that is brilliant. I don't know where I'm going to find the time for that, but you go home. By the time you get home, it's dinner, it's baths, it's snacks and a movie for the kid, and then bedtime, and then I'm done. I check out.
Have you ever come across a case where you're like, oh my? I mean, we talked about sexual exploitation of children, but you're like, oh my God, wait a minute, I got to sit down here for a second.
Yeah, I have a hard time. There is one specific domestic violence one that comes to mind that I just, for whatever reason, I've had several of them, and they all get to me, and I care about all of them. But this one, for some reason, the facts of it and the person I was dealing with, I took that home for several nights. I had a really hard time with it. It kept me up at night.
Oh,
But
boy.
I have a soft spot too for the elder abuse cases, working with those sweet little ladies. That's most of the time what they are, and they have no idea. And even when we send them, there's one in particular, I sent her a packet of information and asked her on this form, do you want to, told her what her rights are and asked her if she wants to exercise them, and she wrote back no. And so I just called her, which, perhaps I shouldn't have, because she said she didn't want to exercise her rights, but I did, and just said, do you really understand what I meant by your crime victim rights? Can we talk about it? And there was restitution involved. She wanted no contact orders. She wanted to attend the hearing. She wanted to make a statement. All these things. I'm like, well, I think it's great you need to do those things, but in order to do those, you have to exercise your rights. That's a part of it.
Yeah.
So it was just, she didn't quite understand it and didn't think it was going to be worth it. Ended up, we got a conviction, and, whether or not she'll really get her money out of the restitution, who knows, but probably not. But we got it ordered.
Well, that's good. I mean, it's got to make you feel good too. I mean, I know I talk to Dave Kessler once in a while, and sometimes he's talking about, yeah, we got this done, we got that done, and it really, and I know the elderly are really people. I don't know what to pray as. I don't know if that's the word, but
They're just vulnerable.
Yeah.
More vulnerable in certain areas because they trust differently
Right.
than we do today.
Right. I know that the Ohio Attorney General's office is taking applications for mini grants.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, we just, they do it every year. There's something called National Crime Victim Rights Week, and this year it's going to be running April 21st through the 27th, I believe. It's 1 week, and they are taking applications for this grant for a community awareness project to just educate folks on what crime victim rights are and to spread awareness. So to conduct, they'll give you a certain amount of money if you're approved to conduct an event, to be able to afford it, an event that maybe you wouldn't be able to do
Right.
without those funds, because we're still doing this outreach with little seminars and stuff that don't really cost much of anything.
Mm-hmm.
But this is an opportunity for us to maybe put a little bit of money into it and do something different.
Now, is there like a national conference you can go to, or, I mean, that you attend yourself, or?
Yeah, there are lots. One of our favorites that the Ohio Attorney General's office offers is something called 2 Days in May. It's just a humongous group of all kinds of different agencies and officials and advocacy organizations. I mean, anything you can imagine. There's all these different classes, and you register for certain ones. You spend 2 solid days going to the classes of your choice in whatever areas interest you. So whether it's about sexual assault or crime victim rights or filling out victims of crime compensation forms, or, maybe last year I attended one that was about a specific case of elder abuse, not financial exploitation, but actual physical elder abuse. That was a real case, and we analyzed it all, and at the end, unfortunately, that woman died at, the example that they were using. But they broke it down. What could the service providers have done differently to make sure that this didn't happen?
Is there a lot of, well, if you would have done this, this wouldn't have happened? I mean, do you get a lot of that? Do you get a lot of, gee, if you would have done your job, you wouldn't have had this? I would just assume it would be.
Well, all three of us, I can speak for us at the prosecutor's office, we're very passionate about the work that we do, and maybe a little too much sometimes, but
it's better than not enough.
I know. Well, we want to make sure that the victims' voices are heard, and so
Sure.
sometimes if we have to yell it right in front of somebody's face, and be obnoxious about it, we're pretty passionate about it. So we try to avoid instances where there's any sort of regret and we feel like we should have voiced their concerns a little louder or maybe differently, or, sometimes you can only do so much, but as long as you're on top of your game and making sure that you and the victim don't miss any opportunities to exercise their rights, make sure their voice is heard and their opinion is heard, just make sure nothing falls through the cracks, and we're all very passionate about it. So.
Obviously, it's not an 8 to 5 job. I mean, you talked about taking work home with you and all those things.
Yes, yeah.
Is that part of the reason to go to law school? Is that what you're thinking, that down the road, and, well, I can do this a little bit better, I can improve myself?
And maybe be the face of the person that, puts those people behind jail, slams the
Right.
doors and all that kind of stuff. But, and like I said, it's the stuff I've been doing for so long anyway. Why not be able to actually sign on the signature
Sure.
line,
Yeah.
You just need that degree. But it's something I'm interested in, so I've always been interested in it. I should have done it a long time ago. But yeah, it's definitely not an 8 to 5 job, There are certain, I'm working with a young lady right now that, she text messages me all night long when something's ringing in her head, because she's not
Right.
just dealing with her trauma from 8 to 5, so. And I don't mind it at all.
One of the, I know that people talk about the caseloads and, gee, we got this, and we only have so many people, and I know, in Greg's office, you guys do a lot of work. I just know you do a lot of work. But sometimes you just stop and say, man, I'm never going to get caught up.
Yeah, the good thing from our end, from Victim Assistance Division, is that there are 3 of us and we have rotating intake weeks. So,
Which means what to viewers?
yeah, like this week is my intake week, which means that any charges that are filed or anybody that's indicted today at grand jury, we have grand jury every Friday, so any new cases that are presented this week in our office that are victim-oriented cases or have witnesses involved will go to me. So that will be my caseload.
Okay.
But then I have 2 weeks of off time where I can get caught up on all the cases that came in and make phone calls and return phone calls and, prepare restitution requests and make sure my calendars are all, so you have 2 off weeks, because your intake week is really,
Right.
you might as well forget it.
Average intake week, for you would be?
It all depends. It really does all depend. It's not uncommon to probably get 10 to 20. It's not uncommon. 20 would be like
10 to 20 a week?
20 would be like you're really getting hammered.
I would say 10.
Yeah, 10. If you get less than 10,
Yeah.
you're scratching your head saying, did something not get to me that was supposed to get to me? Did I miss something because I only have 10 this week? And and you get juvenile ones too, which juvenile caseloads they move rather quickly, most of them. So
why?
Just the nature of the juvenile court system, which really is an entirely different animal when it comes to the criminal justice process. So that's something, different letters go out to victims of juvenile crimes. You work with them differently. It's completely different.
In the average case, I mean, how long does it take to complete a case? I mean, is it weeks, days, hours, months?
Months, yeah, depending on how it starts and how much they're fighting and things, but you can, because that's a common question that people ask, like, how long is this going to take?
Right.
And, you're at the discretion of the court docket a lot of times once it is in the court of common pleas,
Mhm.
so I don't think it's uncommon to expect, 3 to 6 months, depending on, if they're going to just, plead, or if it's going to go
Right.
to trial or what, so.
That's a long time.
I know it is.
That's a long time, but.
I know it is.
I know there's just a lot going on. Other organizations within Fairfield County that people can go to or talk to? I know we mentioned the Lighthouse and.
Yeah, and like I mentioned the Child Advocacy
Right.
Center too.
Which is where is that at?
Over by, what is that called? By the Fairfield Medical Center,
Oh,
like
by
that.
in the Kroger.
Yeah.
The Kroger Park.
Yeah,
or,
it's over there.
Okay.
Like where the B&B used to be,
Right.
like in that
Okay.
area. But to not overwhelm anybody, what we always try to do is have people call us. I always tell people that we're basically a one-stop shop. So call me. Let me find out what you need, what direction you want to go. Make sure it's the right choice for you, that you know all of your options, and then we kind of go from there.
Now, is there a website people can go to? Can they go to Greg Mark's office or Fairfield County Prosecutor, or is there?
And it has our phone numbers on there and everything. So yeah, they can do that if they want to.
We're talking with Ashley Walder as a victim assistance specialist with Fairfield County Prosecutor's Office, Greg Mark's office. When you see something for the first time, in your mind, are you already calculating what's happening, or are you? I mean, I've seen this before. I've
When
read.
a case comes in,
Right,
you mean?
Yeah.
That is similar to a case I've already
Yeah,
seen. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all a little bit different depending on if the victim is cooperative, if the offender is cooperative.
Mhm.
It's domestic violence cases are pretty hairy. You can never really see what direction that's going to go because victims will change their mind, and
Oh, yeah.
it's not uncommon. I think the average time that a victim returns to her abuser in a domestic violence situation is 7 times before she'll actually leave.
7 times.
7 times. That's the
Wow.
average. So that's the most recent calculation. So you
I didn't
have
know
that. You have
that.
those the repeat ones that come in. You just work with them, and you try your hardest. You really, really do. But ultimately, it's up to them and what's in the best interest of themselves and their children. And sometimes we went to domestic violence trainings, and if you break it all down, there are instances where in that woman's mind, in that victim's mind, it is the safest choice to stay, at least for the time being. Whether or not she's going to be abused or not,
Wow.
it's in her best interest. That way, like if they separate and the abuser is granted, unsupervised parenting rights to the children, then that mother is concerned. Well, is he going to take this out on the children? He's
Oh,
going to abuse
I
the
see.
children. So she'd rather take it sometimes. That's just an example.
Right.
So those are hard to predict.
Now, do you talk to younger kids, like junior high kids, or even elementary school kids, or is that? I mean, do you do presentations at that low level? Or?
Yeah, we haven't yet. There are certain there's some red tape that we have to make sure we're not stepping on any toes or anything like that, because there are certain people that are their services are specifically for that demographic, for working with children, like the Child Advocacy Center. It's so. And plus they're juveniles, so a lot of times you should be working with the parents instead. So you really have to watch with that. It's something that we would like to do, but it might be something that we need to educate maybe teachers and faculty and staff members of, signs of abuse and signs of victimization within your own life. And with
Can you
children.
share what those are right now, with the signs of victim abuse? I mean,
Just educating. I would never touch on with them signs of physical abuse in children, because the teachers are already educated in that. It would just be signs of abuse, like in their own life, or signs that somebody else is struggling, like maybe acting out, or drops in grades and all of those kind of things.
something just out of the ordinary that is
Yeah.
completely opposite of. Like,
Where they're really crying for help. And
Yeah, for a straight A student, all of a sudden they're getting D's.
Right.
I mean, that would be.
Yeah.
Is it tough to deal with kids I mean, gee, this
it's
is
different to deal with kids because most of the time, Child Protective Services is then involved. So my contact person changes, and it then becomes that representative at CPS
Right.
instead of the child. That's if like the parent is involved in whatever that criminal activity is. But then if it's a child that's in the care of their parent, then my contact is really the parent. It's whoever is going to be acting in the best interest of the child. Then that's my contact
Now,
person.
sometimes that frustrates you, that you're like, geez, okay, I gotta go over here and I gotta go over here.
Yeah, where you wonder, am I getting the full truth? Is
Right,
this
exactly.
really, something fishy's kind of going on here? But CPS is great to work with, and they take care of all that stuff. So
That's, we just have a few minutes left. We're talking with Ashley Walters, Victim Assistance Specialist with Fairfield County Prosecuting Attorney's Office, Greg Mark's office. So when you're gonna go to law school in the fall at Capitol? Is that
of next year, fall.
Of next year, you're gonna go.
Yeah.
Particular, is it gonna be domestic issues, or are you gonna just specialize in anything?
No idea yet.
No idea, yeah, okay.
Well, I kind of might have ideas, but
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
something that I'm gonna commit to at the moment or
Right.
disclose. But
Yeah. That's it. Well, I have to ask you, how is
Yeah.
it to work with Dave Kessler, seriously?
Dave,
You can tell me, it's all right.
I love Dave. Somebody thinks he's prettier than me, but I like working with Dave. He's very passionate
Yeah.
about and he's very willing. He put up when we did that financial exploitation seminar. I'm obsessive compulsive and a bit of a control freak, and he just gave me the
That's what
hardest
your mom
time.
said, dude.
Oh my gosh, he gave me the hardest time for like 3 months gearing up for that thing. I'm like, you haven't emailed me, a PowerPoint or anything like that. He's like, I'm not stressed, I'm just gonna wing it. What? I don't even understand those words. So we kind of, we're opposite in certain ways, but both passionate.
Yeah.
And we get each other. It's great working with Dave.
Well,
It really is.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
It's, so, I mean, as far as, long-range plans, do you want to open your office someday, or do you want to be a politician?
No. No, I don't want to be a politician. I had toyed with the idea of, I used to work or help somebody work in probate, and I used to really like the idea of that. And then once I kind of got into the criminal side of it, working for that attorney
Right.
actually a little bit, and then I went with the police department. Now where I'm working, I'm pretty passionate about this too. So who knows where it'll go? I mean, no guarantees, but I think the more I think about it, the more I get into the criminal side of it, I'm liking that more and more.
That's, well, I tell you, I don't know how you do it. I really don't. Just a little bit of time, we've spent together, and I'm talking with Dave, and it just, sometimes you got to be able to pull your hair out and say,
It's tough.
Yeah.
It makes it even tougher because when I go home at night, my husband's the kind of person that, he doesn't want to hear about any of that because
Yeah.
it really eats him up and it really bothers him.
Mhm.
So it's one of those things. It's like I really want to, of course you don't tell any of the specifics or anything, but sometimes
Sure.
there's just something you want to get off your chest, and
Mhm.
you just have to cut it off, when you leave for the day and just go
Yeah.
home and spend time with your babies and your family. And
Just kind of sit there and enjoy life.
but it's hard if you just dealt with something where a child was a victim, then you go home and look at your child, and it's hard not to see, that
Yeah.
poor baby's face, look down, like how could somebody hurt a
Right.
child like that? So it's tough. But
One of the questions I was thinking earlier, and we just have a few minutes, is the time of when the incident happens until it's reported. Is there an average? Is it a day, a week?
There's no way to put a number on that because it all depends on what the situation is. If somebody else called 911, if they called 911 themselves, or if it happened a week. I mean, so many different things. This domestic violence, for example, if you're getting in a fist fight with your husband in your own home, a neighbor can hear you and call 911, the cops come. You, as the victim, can get to a phone, call 911, and the cops come. Or you were too embarrassed or too scared to call 911, and then a couple of days later, you confide in a friend and then call the cops. So there's just a way it all depends on the
Yeah.
situation. There's no way to put a figure on it.
People just need to be educated.
Yeah.
They just need to be educated.
There is, we get the fear thing. We totally get the fear thing, and I would never try to assume what the situation is within the walls of their own home, but there are mechanisms in place, and there are services and shelters and protection and all kinds of things available to make it work.
Right.
It can be done.
I'm sure that you've probably been, if you haven't, that you get a report, you go out and check, and the neighbor says, well, this is what, and then you go to the victim saying, no, it didn't happen.
Oh.
Wasn't even close. I don't know what the guy's talking about.
When I was a dispatcher, I mean, that the girls, if they watch this, they know exactly what I'm talking about. That there are even those ones that, you know, as soon as the 911 lights up and you hear their voice, you already know where to send the guys.
Yeah.
You know, you already know where you're sending your officers to, and then they get there and everybody's retracting their statements and changing it, and it happens all the time. But unless there's like physical signs, I mean, what do you do?
Well, Ashley Walters, we appreciate you coming in today and giving us education. Again, Ashley is a victim assistance specialist with Greg Marks' office at the Fairfield County Prosecutor's Office. Thanks. Enjoy the weekend.
Thank you, I will.
I get a chance to ask you, Ohio State fan, not an Ohio State fan?
Ohio State fan.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. This weekend, 3-year-old birthing party, though.
Oh, that's
the only thing
right.
we're thinking about.
And who was his birthday? Is it Bell?
Isabella.
Isabella.
Isabella Blue.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Again, we appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to this edition of Lancaster Perspective. I'm Mike Miller. And remember, until we meet again, let's make a difference.
American Idol asked us to sum up our life goals, and I said I wanted to be a loving father and a faithful husband and a servant of all. And I think the servant of all, that's the main one, and I think that's what we're called to be. And it's to give our life for God, to give our life for those around us, to give our life for the good fight. My name is Jason Castro, and I'm second.